All right, and we are live. What is up, YouTube Boxing family? It is K right here. I'm back with another good live stream today. If you guys want to come join on the conversation, the link will be here. No trolls allowed, only family um, allowed. And yeah, let's get right to it. So let's talk about Mr. Erickson Lubin versus Sebastian Fundora. This will be my final prediction live stream for the fight itself. Um, I think this is a very, very good style matchup. Just simply because Erickson Lubin, if I'm not mistaken, he's never fought a southpaw before. But knowing that if you are the more heavily skilled, deadlier southpaw, you usually end up having like the better edge and skill over somebody that has not faced a true, true, how should I say? They never fought like a dangerous level, top tier southpaw fighter. So I think I think this fight will definitely show out a lot for what the fans want to see out of this fight, and I think Erickson Lubin versus Fundora is going to be those type of fights where a lot of people we're not going to expect the fight to be this actually competitive, and I think it's going to be a true 50-50 matchup. But for me personally, I got Erickson Lubin by KO. I don't see Fundora really lasting long against Erickson Lubin's pressure, and I think eventually when it goes into a late game situation, I think Fundora he's going to basically break down to Lubin's body shots, and Lubin he's a really really good body puncher, and he knows how to pressure people off their back foot. So I don't think Fundora has the capabilities to actually handle Erickson Lubin's punching power to the body. And I think Fundora he looks weight draped for 154. He he's like 6'5" or 6'6" to be almost exact, and he has a mega arm reach for his weight class. And I just find it weird that he tries to drain himself to 154 because based off of his size, he's basically big enough to be a light heavyweight cruiserweight type of fighter. And I think Fundora understands that he can't be forcing his body to 154. And I just don't like his frame being built into that weight because he hasn't faced any true super size 154 pounders. And I think Erickson Lubin will be that guy to actually test him. And the thing about it is that Lubin, he's not like your typical like small 154 pounder. He's actually like a really really big 154 pounder. I can definitely say that for personal proof because when I was at the Turning Stone Casino and I actually ran into him, he's actually like a lot bigger, in person. And I think personally for me, he may not look big like as far as his pre-fight shape type of build, but I would say on fight night he actually looks a lot bigger than for what you see out of him just in person when he's getting ready to get prepared for a fight. So like me personally, like I would say Lubin is actually a true 154 pounder that actually has muscle and he actually has a good frame to handle the weight. But on top of that, he looks a lot bigger than Fundora. As far as his body frame and his muscle physique. So I just think how that fight is going to play out is that Fundora, he's not going to have the ability to handle the physical pressure by Lubin. But then on top of that, Fundora, he does have reach. So, if Sebastian Fundora tries to go out there and uses his height against Lubin, then I think Lubin could very well be in trouble. But the problem is just that does Fundora have the power to actually hurt Erickson Lubin? And I would say no, because Fundora, he doesn't really have that many knockouts, and the only knockouts he really ever had would probably be against, I guess, like the low level opposition that he was fed through the PBC. but it's not like he's been getting actual knockouts. He's just been getting a lot of referee stoppages that don't really count as knockouts. So, people want to say Fundora has power, but I don't see that. Like me personally, like I think Fundora just has semi-volume punching power, but for Erickson Lubin's case, he has actual destructive power. Like when you actually get hit by him, you can see the body language change up on a fighter when they're in the ring with him. But for Fundora's case, he's not that type of guy to actually handle the amount of pressure that comes to him. But whenever he's facing guys that are lower level opposition compared to him, of course he's able to hurt him because those guys have never taken like a really good punch. And I'm pretty sure most of them can't really handle punch resistance very well. So therefore, the PBC has been strategically giving him opponents to make himself look good to the masses, and then obviously like his most credible win up to date would be the Nathaniel Gallimore fight, but for that fight alone, pretty much showed that in the Nathaniel Gallimore fight, he wasn't able to hurt Gallimore. He was just able to just out pressure him and just basically outgun him to the point where Gallimore, he wasn't throwing punches. And then that's what caused Gallimore to get stopped by the referee, because it was all politically set up for him to basically get a knockout. Because Gallimore, he's never been stopped. He's never been brutally hurt in his career. But for him to get stopped by a semi volume puncher in Sebastian Fundora, I just don't find that victory over Gallimore to be very credible, because that's not to really say like, oh, Fundora, he's such a good power punching monster. No, he has good, decent volume punching power, but like compared to anybody else that hits super duper hard at at the 154-pound division, you would have to say guys like Jermel Charlo or Jason Rosario and Erickson Lubin, and like I would say like those type of fighters leading down, under them have super punching power that actually hurts you in the division itself. So for Fundora's case, he has something to prove when he gets inside the ring with Erickson Lubin that will actually determine how good of a fighter he really is coming into that fight. But the problem is that Erickson Lubin, he's not coming in to bang with Fundora. He's actually coming in to actually stop him. So I think how this fight will play out is that Fundora, he's going to come into the fight thinking inside his head, okay, well, this guy, he's going to come at me. But if he uses his height on him, I think Lubin might be in trouble, because I think what's going to happen is that I think what Fundora is going to do, he's going to basically try to get rough and dirty with him. But when he gets hit really hard by Lubin, and then he's able to actually time Lubin's shots and then out counter him, in which, don't get it twisted, like Fundora doesn't have, any defense, but the problem is that when Fundora lands a really good shot on you, he knows how to finish very well. So what Fundora will eventually do is that he's going to try to find those big shots that he could land onto Lubin, and then when he sees Lubin hurt, similar to a way of how he got hurt a little bit by Terrell Gaucher, I think Fundora is going to start attacking Lubin fast. But then again, Fundora, he's very vulnerable to get hurt too. So if Lubin does, the same thing, don't be surprised if Lubin tries to knock him down or hit him with like a big ass shot where Fundora can look like he's gonna get knocked out, because Fundora is very, very suspect with his chin too, because even though he hasn't been in there with big heavy handed punchers, you can easily tell that especially from like guys like the Jorge Cota fight, and I probably even say maybe Sergio Garcia, even though Sergio Garcia, he's not too much of a knockout puncher, but those fights where those guys have decent respectable power, they do give Fundora trouble and Fundora has looked a little bit shaky in those fights. So I truly believe with the fight, against a guy like Erickson Lubin, I think Lubin's going to start pressing on Fundora early, and then Fundora, he's not going to know how to respond to those heavy shots, and then he's going to try, basically fighting off the back foot, in which he has proven that he cannot fight going backwards. And I think Lubin's going to stop him to the body, or just basically, chop him down to the point where Fundora, he's basically just going to give up, because Fundora, he doesn't have any defense. He likes to be rough and rowdy, in the pocket, and he doesn't really have any good, boxing ring IQ to actually make any proper adjustments in a fight, where he actually can make those quick, fast adjustments in the fight itself to actually out counter his opponents. So I think how that fight's going to play out is that I think Lubin's going to stop him late. I'm not too sure if this is a 12 rounder, but if it is a 12 rounder, I think Lubin's going to stop him, in the 10th. But if it's going to be 10 rounds, I think Lubin's going to drop him early in the 4th, and he's going to stop Fundora in the 8th or 9th round. But I do believe Erickson Lubin will come out on top. This is still a very risky fight for Lubin, because honestly, like, we really don't know how Fundora is going to come into this fight. He could really come in super jacked up in this fight, and just out of nowhere, he could just start punching like crazy. But who knows? I personally believe Lubin's going to have the physical advantages over Fundora, and I don't think Fundora's power is going to be as good as many people hype him up to be, to say, oh, he's going to punch Lubin, he's going to knock him out, he's just going to boss him, around and blah blah blah. No, dude, because if Fundora had that type of power to begin with, he should have been knocked out guys like J Rock. He should have been knocked out guys like Jared Hurd, or guys out of the top 25, at the division, and then that would actually speak a lot of volumes out of how Fundora is as a fighter. But now, leading up to this point, he really hasn't faced any top tier level 154 pounders. So that's why that this fight is very questionable, because Fundora has so much to really prove against a guy like Lubin, because Lubin, is basically touted to be one of the best 154 pounders in his division. And then on top of that, he should have been got a rematch title shot with Jermell Charlo years ago. But obviously, Jermell Charlo wanting to become undisputed, um, he basically probably had to take a lot of step aside money just to basically wait for Charlo to unify his titles. So that obviously explains such a long wait prior to prior to 2017, when Lubin got got KO'd. But ever since then, Lubin's just been on a mega tear. He beat guys like Ishe Smith. He stopped them for the first time. He beat Nathaniel Gallimore. That's a good fight. Terrell Gaucher, that's a highly credible victory. He stopped Jason Rosario, former unified 154-pound champion. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, Lubin's, resume pretty much speaks for itself as a fighter, for how much he's grown in the sport. And I think, if he were to fight Charlo now, or, leading up into the future for a potential rematch, I think Lubin can definitely beat Charlo now, because Lubin has learned from the Charlo loss that Charlo's power is good, but that's only when you leave yourself wide open to get hit by Charlo. So I think Lubin coming into that fight a lot more educated, and taking his time in that fight, and actually looking for the right shots to attack Charlo. I think Lubin's going to become that potential bad style matchup to defeat Charlo, because I think Lubin can definitely prove to the world why he is that man that everyone says that he could be, that dark horse, out of the division. So I think this fight really has a lot to prove, as far as how good Lubin is as a fighter. Because if Lubin doesn't look good against a guy like Sebastian Fundora, then his stock definitely goes down as a fighter. But then on top of that, he doesn't really have that much, like how should I say, notoriety loss, because if you do lose to the better fighter in Fundora, that doesn't hold you back further. That actually just puts you, in the mix with other guys that you could easily reclimb back into the rankings. So, it's not like Lubin is basically out of the woods if he does lose, but knowing how much he's really hungry to become a world champion and actually have the actual potential to fight Jermel Charlo for undisputed if he's able to beat Brian Castano, or if or if Brian Castano defeats Jermel Charlo, that will speak a lot of volumes for how good 154 has grown. Because if Lubin can beat Fundora, or if Fundora beats Lubin, they basically get a shot for undisputed. So that actually means that you're going to become the actual mandatory for the WBC, and you're going to get all the other belts on the line to become undisputed. So, if anything, that actually scales well for Jamel Charlo's case to actually stay at 154 for a little bit longer. And then, after he cleans out the division entirely, he can just move up to 160, and then boom. But if Lubin or Fundora beats Jermel Charlo or Brian Castano winner, then that makes them the A side coming into those big fights, heading up into 160 or above. But then again, I think Lubin's going to become the victor out of this fight because he shows that he's more hungrier. He's fought the more dangerous level of competition, and he is more dedicated than he was back then. Because obviously the transformation has shown that 2017 Lubin, he was good, but he wasn't dedicated to being disciplined in the sport. But now, fast forward into 2022, 5 years later, you can easily see the transformation out of Erickson Lubin's skill set as a fighter and his focus as a fighter to show that naturally he's just been grown as to be that game bred fighter. And I'm just that believer to believe that there's some fighters out there that are game bred where even though that they might not have the right resume builder to show how good that they are to you, but sooner than later they will eventually show how good of a fighter they are to grow from their losses and then rise up tremendously in their greatest victories. So to me, I personally believe Erickson Lubin is that guy to be the next big thing to take over 154. But then on top of that, you can't forget about guys like Jaron Ennis, Errol Spence, or possibly Terrence Crawford that will very well eventually move into 154. But I truly believe that the bigger fish coming from 147 that could easily become a threat into 154 will be guys like Errol Spence and Jaron Ennis. Because when Boots finishes his business at 147, don't be surprised if Erickson Lubin and Jaron Ennis can be made next very, very soon in the future, because Jaron Ennis will be gunning after Erickson Lubin when he starts to get his undisputed reign completed at 147, and then he moves up he moves up to 154 to challenge Erickson Lubin. So yeah, that's pretty much that I have to say for Erickson Lubin and Fundora. I'm not really so sure how the betting odds would be, but I would basically say that Fundora is probably going to become the mega underdog coming into this fight, just simply because people don't know how good the fight itself will be for Fundora, having to scale against Erickson Lubin. But I just think how this fight will play out is that. If Erickson Lubin is victorious, there's definitely a lot of betting favoritism on him. And then Fundora, if he beats, Lubin, in a devastating manner, that's definitely going to, favor, the betting odds, to be, you know, basically one on Fundora's side. But yeah, I think this fight is still a true 50-50 matchup. I don't think Fundora is going to come into this fight with a really dumb mindset. I think honestly he's going to take his time trying to pick his shots, carefully into Lubin's punching placement. But then on top of that, if Lubin catches him with something really, really hot, then I think Lubin can definitely stop him very, early or very late, heading into the fight. But just by looking at the athletic physique, I think Lubin is like the more athletically gifted fighter that's going to give Fundora a lot of problems, and I think Fundora, he's like the more physically gifted, taller fighter to use his height and reach advantage to defeat Lubin if he really wanted to box him. But I don't think that's going to happen because Lubin, he has more of a bigger frame to dog walk Sebastian Fundora, but I think Fundora, um, basically, if Fundora is able to go blow for blow with Erickson Lubin, that's if his chin actually holds up. Then I think Erickson Lubin could be in some decent trouble. But I think when Lubin finds those big shots to actually break Fundora down, which I do believe that's going to be late game to the body, then I think Lubin's going to knock out Fundora very, very bad. So I mean, my final prediction on that is just simply that I have Erickson Lubin by destructive KO. Um, I think it's going to end with a body shot, or it's going to end with a really really bad left uppercut. And I think the straight rights are going to be there all night for Erickson Lubin to outgun Sebastian Fundora. But yeah, I think Lubin definitely needs to stop him because Fundora, for those of you that don't know, he's with Samson Promotions. These are the same promotional business that's I think aligned with David Benavides, and David Benavides, he's obviously one of those politically touted fighters through that promotional stable, and I just think how dirty that Samson has been moving their fighters. I think Fundora is definitely going to be favorited, to probably win by robbery decision. So I don't think Lubin's going to get the fair treatment of getting the better judging, scored into his favor. So I think what Lubin needs to do, he needs to go in there, he needs to knock him out, and he needs to beat Fundora to the punch, and he needs to dominate him. All 12 rounds or 10 rounds. Either way, I think Lubin's going to be victorious, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a very very difficult fight. So yeah, that's pretty much like my initial thoughts on that. But I also wanted to chime in on Ryan Garcia versus Emmanuel Tego, and who else is fighting? I think Triple G and Murata, which I'm not gonna talk about that, but I'll just finish it off with Ryan Garcia and Emmanuel Tego. Um, I think this is a very very good fight. I think Ryan Garcia, he has a very very tough opponent in front of him, and I don't think Tego he's coming around to play games. I think Tego he's going to show to Ryan that he's not that type of opponent that was cherry picked, and I think it's going to be a cherry pick gone wrong. The reason why that I say that is because Tego he has fought some decent level opposition, but the problem is just that Tego hasn't been tested with a heavy level puncher. I think the reason why Ryan Garcia could easily make a lot of people, question his, long ring layoff is basically due to the fact that obviously, he hasn't fought since January of last year against Luke Campbell. But knowing that this fight, heading up into now, will be fought at a catch weight at 139 pounds. But on top of that, Emmanuel Tego, his recent fight was 2 years ago, back in 2020, against Mason Menard. And the reason why that I question this fight a lot is that he didn't really look too good against Mason. He was supposed to stop him. He was supposed to dominate Mason Menard, And knowing that he's been out the ring for well over 2 years, I don't think Emmanuel Tego is going to look as good as many people say he's going to actually do. And that's mainly because, but the reason why is mainly due to the fact that he hasn't really fought anybody notable at 135 leading up to Mason. If you actually think about it, his opponents that he's fought, a lot of them don't really have good records. Some of them have decent records, but it's like these are fighters that he basically fought that don't really have too much of a resume to actually build him. And then on top of that, every single one of his fights have been fought inside Ghana. So he hasn't really fought anybody except Mason Menard, who was his real biggest test. And looking at the scorecards, yeah, he won by majority decision, but one out of the three judges had it 95-95, in which I can definitely say that fight definitely deserved itself to be a draw, but but the problem is, is that when you don't look good, against a fighter that has been stopped by two other fighters, or actually five other fighters, if I'm not actually mistaken. Um, you know, um, I believe Mason has been stopped by Christian Tapia. He's been stopped by Teofimo Lopez. He's been stopped by Devin Haney. He's been stopped by Beltran and some other dude that I don't know. But still, that should that should pretty much show to you that Emmanuel Tego, he's not really showing himself to the world how good of a fighter he really is, because he needs to prove to Ryan Garcia that he's actually that guy to be noticeable in the division. So if he actually doesn't look good against Ryan, and then Ryan actually fucks around and brutally stops him, then I won't be surprised, because I think Ryan's going to be heavily favored on the scorecards to automatically win the fight. And I don't think Emmanuel Tego, he's not going to win this fight by decision. He needs to go in there and he needs to knock Ryan out. He needs to test that shin early, and he needs to press him all night. But on top of that, if Ryan does the same exact thing to Emmanuel Tego, I think Ryan could very well end up knocking out Tego very, very early, because Tego hasn't really been tested against heavy handed punchers. Even though, a guy like Mason Menard, he has, good punching power, but, most of his knockouts were against guys that people don't even know. So he's been knocking out lower level opposition. So I think this fight, I think this fight will be a good fight, but I'm not going to favor Ryan Garcia to beat Tego. I think Tego will knock out Ryan, but the problem is that you haven't been in the ring since 2020. So, I don't know how your energy is going to be coming into this fight. And then on top of that, if you're not going to be athletically gifted enough to get away from Ryan's punches, in which Tego, he has been stopped before, and his chin does not look that good late game coming into a fight. I think if Ryan times that shit very, very well, he could very well stop Tego. But if he times his punches very well, Ryan can definitely get stopped, because it's obviously shown that a non-puncher in Luke Campbell can easily stop Ryan Garcia. But Luke Campbell's not a closer. He's just a boxer. He does not know how to close, because he's not he's not a heavily gifted southpaw. But for Emmanuel Tego, he can definitely stop you, but his punches are more of like a volume puncher type of punches. So I don't know. I think honestly, this fight is definitely going to go, neck and neck. But I definitely have to choose Tego, definitely knocking out Ryan Garcia. And if Ryan Garcia, if he's able to take Tego's punching power, then I think Ryan's going to stop Tego to the body, or he's just going to, use his jab all night, because Ryan is the taller and I think longer fighter with his arm reach. But I think this fight is going to be a very, very good, competitive fight. So I definitely would, slightly favor Tego, to beat Ryan, just simply because he has the more, boxing, gifted experience. So I don't know. honestly, I think Ryan, he's going to show a lot of deficiencies because he's been out the ring since 2021 back in January. So I don't really expect Ryan Garcia to actually be that type of guy. Hey, salute to you, King D. How's everything going? King D said Ryan is full of it, and the more I hear analysis on this Ryan Garcia fight, it makes me want to see. Wasn't going to watch, but Ryan, because Ryan is a duck, but I'll see how I'm feeling. Yeah, yeah. I don't, really expect Ryan to to actually show me anything different, but I'll definitely tune into that fight because I think Ryan Garcia, he has a lot to prove coming into this fight, but if he actually just fucks around and looks really really bad against Emmanuel Tego, then I think Tego, he's definitely going to he's definitely going to stop him because Tego, he trains out of like a really good gym. That's the gym that Javier Centeno runs over at the Sweatbox Boxing Gym down in Florida. And Tego, he be working super duper hard, and he looks very very focused. So, he's definitely coming into this fight against Ryan Garcia with no games played, and I think Ryan Garcia, he understands that Tego, he's coming into that fight really focused, and he's actually going to look like that. He's going to try to kill Ryan Garcia, in the ring. So I don't see how Ryan Garcia would not see that, and I hope that I hope that Ryan Garcia definitely gets his ass knocked out because I don't think he's that good of a fighter. But if he is, then that fight's going to be very interesting to watch. But I want to see Ryan get stopped and upset though. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, look, if you haven't been focused in the ring and you haven't been focused outside of like your life in boxing, then that pretty much explains why Ryan Garcia is not that good of a fighter because it's if you have like your own stablemates like Canelo, Alvarez, explaining to the world how undedicated you are as a fighter, not showing up to the gym and actually being focused in your career, then that pretty much explains how much of a fighter that you are by not being focused and being, basically just, absolute low tier level trash. Because if you got guys like Canelo, exposing you, then that pretty much shows who you are as a fighter. Hey, how's it going? Boxing matchups with Dwayne Freeman. Hope everything is well with you. Um, King D said I would be sick if I missed that. Yeah, most definitely. I think honestly, uh, the Ryan Garcia fight is going to be interesting, but the problem that I have with this fight is that this fight is at a 139 catch weight. So if Ryan comes into this fight looking like a welterweight and Emmanuel Tego, he's not able to handle the size and pressure coming from Ryan, then I think Ryan will have the size, advantage over him. But but if Tego comes into this fight, guns blazing hot and he's actually hurting Ryan Garcia, then I think Ryan Garcia could very well be stopped. And I think Ryan Garcia, he's going to get outboxed very, very bad because, Ryan Garcia is definitely not going to be fighting off of his bicycle, the entire night. And I think Tego, he's going to definitely look for that one big punch to try to knock out Ryan Garcia. And I think honestly, this fight is definitely going to go into a late game situation where somebody's going to get hit very, very hard, and whoever lands that big heavy handed punch on each other, I think that's what's going to determine that fight to be a very very short night. So, but I'm not going to doubt Ryan Garcia's power. Ryan Garcia has a very deadly left hook, and I think every time he hits that left hook consistently, that just pretty much shows that you can't, be walking into his punches because he's definitely a bona fide puncher. But if he had boxing ability with it, he could very well stop a lot of guys a lot sooner because he has like that good frame of a true boxer puncher, similar to a Oscar De La Hoya in a way, but he's not really honing his skills and expanding his craftsmanship as a fighter to be there. So I think if Tego exposes that and shows how how limited he is as a fighter, then I think Tego could very well beat him. I think just by looking at how these styles are, Ryan doesn't possess enough defensive responsibility against true, purely gifted boxers or boxer punchers. So I think Tego could be that very first blueprint in defeating a Ryan Garcia. And if Ryan Garcia comes out very very successful in that fight, then I think guys like Gervonta or Devin Haney would very well beat him very very well. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say. I actually got to get going, but I will be, going live probably sometime tomorrow or, definitely on the weekend. To which I'll probably be doing like a fight call possibly for the Lubin and Fundora fight, and I'll probably do the Ryan Garcia fight too. But yeah, be sure to check me out on that, and I'll be back with more content. Um, like I'm always on the run doing stuff, but yeah, man, I'll be on the grind, and yeah, like I appreciate you guys coming through. So I gotta get going, and thank you guys for tuning in. But be sure to keep me out or keep updated with all the posts and updates that I bring to the channel. And yeah, um, like I'll definitely see you guys later. All right, see you guys, and salute to the mighty LDBC. All right, bye.